Hey, Ian.
All right, welcome everyone to this week's edition of the WPIAL Blitz show. We have two very special guests joining us. This is actually the first time we've ever done this where we've helped promote a camp that's happening. But one of the things that people who've watched the show for a while know is we like to try and highlight some of those players who don't always get shout outs, the offensive linemen, the specialists, things like that. So this weekend happening in Pittsburgh area, Ricky Krautman from Krautman Kicking and Adam Napotnik from Napalm Kicking are having a specialists clinic this Labor Day weekend. So it's a one day only event. I'll let them talk more about it, but we're really excited to have them on and talk about their camp and also talk about some of the great things that are happening because the Whippeals produced some pretty talented specialists over the years and have a kid at Fox Chapel right now that's committed to Georgia. So it's an exciting time for the third phase of the game. And so we'll start with you, Coach Ricky. How did you kind of get into the training and camp aspect of kicking and specialists?
Well, thanks again for having us. I appreciate it. Actually, I've always been more of like a one-on-one small group type coach. This whole camp thing came about just I've been to a few different states where, I did smaller camps like Rochester, which is a city in New York.
Mhm.
I did a camp there. I got about 15 kids. That was last month and it went great and I got great feedback. So I have family in Swissvale, Monroeville, and they told me that you should come out here. And I had met Adam through Twitter X, great networking obviously with you guys, and I really wanted to get this Pittsburgh thing started. I got a lot of kids in the on the East Coast that were saying, oh, you should do a camp near West Virginia or a camp near Ohio. So I was like, what's a better place than Pittsburgh, and I truly love what I do, and I'm so glad that Napalm Kicking can be joining forces with me for this great camp this Sunday at Pine Richland. I heard Pine Richland's like one of the nicest stadiums and schools, in the state. So definitely looking forward to that. But I played soccer growing up, as I think Napalm did too, right? Adam, you played soccer.
Yep, all the way up until high school.
So soccer really helped us transform into the kickers that we are today. Obviously, focusing on family, academics was the most important thing for me in high school. Besides football, I always was taught family and school first. And then when I went to high school, Arapahoe High School in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, I went to high school with Chris Sims, Phil Sims' son, and a lot of all-star football players at Arapahoe. And I ended up going to Syracuse on a full scholarship for kicking along with four other colleges, full scholarships. But I love what I do. And the most important thing is, helping these student athletes out. And it's not so much this Sunday, it's not a ranking camp. We're going to be evaluating, we'll be taking videos and getting them better instruction, fundamentals, consistency is key type stuff. But I was talking to the Central Catholic special teams coach the other day, and he said, we usually don't send guys to, kicking coaches during the season because we just don't. So I said, it's not that type of camp. It's not going to be a ranking camp. A lot of these coaches are afraid, I guess, of the rankings, the stars, getting into these kids' heads. But it's almost the opposite. We're going to actually get these kids mentally tough, mentally prepared for the season. That's why we're running this camp, is to get them prepared for the season and get them mentally, physically, technique wise, fundamentally wise, confident going into their season because season has started already. So, right, Coach Nate, Coach Adam. I mean, we're going into this full swing, and it's for the kids, man. It's not, yeah, of course, Napalm and I have a pretty decent following, but it's not about us; it's about the kids. So we want to give back to the city of Pittsburgh and all the neighboring states. We want to make a difference and get these guys better. Most importantly, self-confident.
Yeah, and that was my question there too. Is there so I don't recall any in-season camp. I mean, for football of any consequence there. So yeah, you basically, just said exactly what you're doing is you're really getting these guys ready for the season. What's your opinion on the Big 33 uh does a kind of a one day tryout for all of their long snappers, punters, and kickers. Obviously, they go through an film evaluation, and then the kids are invited, and then basically there's just a one day competition, and it determines who makes the team and who doesn't. And a lot of these guys, especially for long snappers, it's like their day in the sun, and it seems like whoever makes the Big 33 team here in Pennsylvania for the long snapper gets like a Division One scholarship. So what do you think about that aspect of, evaluating kickers, punters, and long snappers, that it's, one day and that's it?
Coach, I was gonna let Adam chime in on this too, because I know he
Sure.
knows more about the big 33 and all that other stuff. But honestly, I think that, and we've been, I don't know if I talked to you, Napalm, Adam, Coach Adam, but I've been actually not asked, but WPIAL Insider, who became a friend of mine, on X. He's like, I can write something up where we can evaluate, some good guys. Maybe that'll get some good guys there this Sunday. So I've been in touch with a lot of guys. We have about 10 signups right now, but we're looking to get, hopefully another 10 more. And Coach Adam, obviously he's from Pittsburgh, so he's trying his best to get some guys. And Coach Adam, what do you think? I mean, you can't put off tomorrow what you can do today. So if we did something this Sunday, obviously we do have some more intermediate probably kickers that are eighth graders, because I did advertise this camp more, middle school, high school, college. What do you think, Adam, about the whole Big 33? And if it's not this Sunday, can we do something like that? And maybe get this thing going with that. That'd be a cool thing to do.
So I actually am a pretty good one to speak on this because I have a Big 33 alumni
Yeah,
who
exactly.
trained with me, Braden Ballantine, the snapper from Hampton, who was a Cal U. So I like the format. Like I'm in between. I'm not a huge ranking camp guy. I saw the ugliness of it when I was in high school. So I used to be like a top 50, top 60 kicker in the country going into senior year. My ranking dropped because I couldn't go to another showcase camp because we were still playing football. So like a ranking camp that I was supposed to go to and was invited to in December was the same day as my state semifinal game in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Obviously, you're not going to the ranking camp. And then I dropped like 40 or 50 spots because it's such a crucial spot to be reevaluated.
Sure.
And I look at it from the standpoint of, well, in the summer, I was a top 60 kicker in the country. I scored 100 points on a team that went to a state championship. Why am I dropping? Like, so there is some like what isn't a true evaluation there. But from the Big 33 standpoint, like you obviously have to kind of narrow it down to like a day or two to get an evaluation. And it's obvious usually how guys separate themselves. Like you can see very good long snappers to great long snappers, like guys that are Division 1 level just kind of stand out. It's obviously kind of a unique year this year and even next year in the WPIAL with how loaded these classes are. I mean, when I was making field goals in the 40s in high school a decade ago, that was a big deal. We had, I think there were 3 or 4 WPIAL guys in last year's class who made 50-plus yard field goals. Like Billy Leck
Oh,
made like 4 at
yeah.
Central
And
Catholic. Like
even
it's
across
changed
the
so
state,
much.
there were guys with multiple 50-plus yard field goals last year.
Yeah, there was a couple kids at Coatesville, the brothers at St. Joe's Prep. One of them I think is now a freshman at Delaware, I think, and another one went to Punta, Connecticut. Like it's so hard once you get to that level if you have kids like that competing for one of those spots because it's like, well, what separates the kid from UConn versus the kid at Temple versus the kid at Georgia? Like I think that, and they would probably tell you this, Haran and Jacobo, they are both, power 4 level kickers. That ranking it's just such like a small little thing. Like the difference between now 1 and 7, 2 and 6 is so much smaller than it was a decade ago. Like I
So,
always say, go look at rankings from 10 years ago. You'll go up and down that list of, oh, I know that guy. It's Evan McPherson. He's in the NFL. The guy below him, you have no idea who it is. Like there's that level has started to really, the gap is narrowing every year. But you have to set up something where you're evaluating from the standpoint of you've got to put some pressure on kids. You've got to, hey, this is your moment, this is your opportunity. Because once you get into the higher levels, like an NFL kicking tryout mid-season now, they'll fly you out somewhere. You'll take 2 or 3 kickoffs and 4 or 5 field goals, and that's it. That's how they're evaluating kickers now. So you do have to put that pressure and that like highlight on guys and kind of make them like put them in a pressure cooker a little bit. Hey, there's a lot of talent here. How do you separate yourself? And that's something that kids have to adjust to because that's how it is in college. Where you take 5 or 6 reps a day in camp. If there's 2 or 3 other guys, you're taking 4 or 5 charted kicks, and that's it. And that's where you get to show what you're great at.
And I
And
think
so
that
for
builds.
go ahead, Ian.
Oh yeah, I think that builds on something that Coach Ricky said to kick it off here, pun intended. That the camp is both about skills, but also about mental toughness. And I think for a kicker, whether it's kicker, punter, whatever it is, like other than cornerbacks who have to have a memory as short as one play and like gotta just forget it and go cover the receiver again, like kickers have to have an incredibly short memory because like there's so much that can happen on a given kick that you can't control, right? Like you could have the best approach, the best footwork, the best kick. If the holder puts the laces back or doesn't get the ball down in time, or even, if someone doesn't block and a guy gets around the edge and lays out, and like you
Gust
can
of
put your
wind.
exactly, like there's so much that can happen that's beyond your control, and just having that mental toughness to like put a bad kick behind you and move forward, I think is incredibly important, especially for kids at this late age and
Yeah,
this level.
you have to learn eventually, like bad things are going to happen and you have to just let them go. Like I always joke around. My quarterback was Danucci at Pine
Yeah.
Ridge, so he was also my holder. There were times he's given me laces on extra points when we're up 63-10. Like he's been out of the game for 2 quarters, but he's still holding for me. And you just have to not let that affect you. Like you still kick the ball the same way. It can't change your mental thing. Like I always even talk about when I was a young kicker, the difference in the vision. Like if I'm coming at the ball, I'm right footed. The way my holder would spin the ball when I was young used to throw me off. Like if he spun it towards me, I always felt like I had a tendency to swing back across because my brain is seeing the ball twist this way away from me. It's stuff like that you almost have to break out of your own habit and like work through where it just doesn't even affect you. Like I see so many young guys, and I'm sure Coach Krautman does too. They want to watch the snap, like coming back on. That's the worst. That you can't control that. You need to be eyes on your spot, going to your plant. If the ball is there, you kick it. And if it's not there, it's not your fault. And that's a tough thing for high school guys. But in the end, like you have to build that mindset of like, I can only do what I can control. You can't worry about the other things around you, especially once you get out in games.
To the layperson, it looks like each kicker has, their own way that they do it. Just like so many golfers have, their own golf swing. There's a standard way of kicking it and there's their unique way of kicking it, it looks like. So, what do you guys, when you get these guys at the camp, do you try and maybe break them of a bad habit that they need to do something differently, or do you try and just kind of let them go and however they can kick it, you just let them kick it?
Oh, want me to start, Adam, or you want me to start?
No, you go first.
Well, the most important thing is, I would say 75% of the student athletes that are going to be there this Sunday pretty much know how to kick and punt. They've had coaches before, but bottom line is there's going to be some other kids that don't know as much as those other guys. So our not so much our responsibility as coaches. We already know that to help these guys out with their technique and mechanics. I really do believe that form and technique and trusting the process, and everyone's going to have different technique. I mean, meaning like, nothing's going to be my way or the highway, except, if they're doing something wrong or it's inconsistent or erratic, we're going to speak up and nip it in the bud right away. I don't let things fly really. Now, they're the ones kicking, they're the ones punting, they're the ones long snapping. They have to develop their own unique technique, but we're going to be, able to really maximize their potential with watching video analysis, things like that. And if there's any type of constructive criticism we're going to give, it's going to be this Sunday, not during their games. Obviously, I try to stay away from, even though if I'm coaching at a few different high schools in New Jersey and also maybe a little bit this year, Del Valle and Milford, Pennsylvania, because I live in northeastern Pennsylvania. And, for me during games, I kind of don't even get in the kicker's head or ear. I just say, have fun, stay focused, and do what you've been taught. If you make a mistake during the game, I don't like to let things go. I mean, why let things go if the kid's going to get another bad habit or let's say miss another kick? So for me, and I know Coach Adam and I are on the same page with that. if we see something wrong or something inconsistent, we're going to step right in and tell him or her, hey, this is what you got to do to make the next kick. And I want them to have fun though. I want them to be original with their own form too, a little bit, you know, with their own style. But I'm more into like, all right, if you do something wrong, if you're approaching too much of the ball and the ball's going right, or you're coming around and the ball's going left, obviously on film does not lie. You're going to see that on film. And that's the goal, is just to help them out with the, you know, for the next day they're in practice, or maybe help win the competition at our camp this Sunday, whatever's going to mentally, you know, strike in their minds. And, you know, visualization is very important as well. So we're going to help with the mental. Go ahead, Coach Adam.
Yeah, Bruce. I look at it in two ways. So when I'm in more like, so I'm in Pittsburgh 5 or 6 times a year. I travel back to run camps. Like I'm in March. I'll be in October this year. I'm working out the dates still. It's been a busy summer, as Coach Krautman can attest to. But I look at it two ways. So when I'm in the off season and training guys, I'm way more multi-level detail. Like I'm throwing a lot at kids. We're trying different things. As you get into the season, it's more about looking at things and saying, okay, this might be the one thing. This might be, you know, you might be planning too wide. You might be planning this way. You might be too fast the ball. Like, we're looking for the more obvious things that can help them, because there's some detail things that you just can't hammer out in a day. It's seeing like what guys do, taking it and going. Like I talk to young guys all the time. I'm texting them and they're like, well, I'm not doing this. I'm like, right, but how many times have you repped it? Like you got to do the little things hundreds and hundreds of times. And then, so there's also a level of, you can obviously see when things are wrong, but it's understanding how to get kids to fix it. Like, the fixes are not cookie cutter. So I have a kid up in Massachusetts I'll use as an example. He plants way too wide sometimes. And I've put the cone next to it. I've said, hit the cone, hit the spot, all these different things. Well, I finally watched him set up, and he sets himself up. So like, if this is the ball, he starts with his right foot behind the ball, left foot where he would plant before he takes his steps. So I said, well, move your feet. Start with your left foot behind the ball. Stay on that line. So now when he takes his steps over, he's 6 inches more narrow. He doesn't have to think about getting more narrow in his plant now. Now he already is more narrow. So that's a side for coaches where it's cookie cutter in the sense of you're trying to get them to the right spot and doing what most kickers do that helps them get their hips through, keep their shoulders in the right spot. But for me at least, it's how can I get them there without them having to think about it over and over and over again? And that's an easy fix. You just, you do it at the beginning of a session. Or I'll have kids. I have a 2028. I think he's coming to camp. He kicks at Armstrong. He's 6'3". He's a big kid. The first time I ever worked with him, he was taking field goal steps shorter than mine. So I'll watch kids and I'll have them step, because I still kick all the time. So like I love going out and repping it with guys. I'll have them take their steps and stand there. And then I will take my steps and I set myself up and I'll be like, dude, you are 6 inches taller than me. And I am half a foot, like half a yard farther back than you. That makes 0 sense. And that's how you kind of get kids to like figure it out in like the basic level. And then once you get into the more detailed things, it's, you're repping it, you're doing all these things. Like the number one punting drill, how did I become a better punter? You become a better punter by never actually punting a football. It is standing on the sideline when you're bored at practice, drops. Can you drop it in the right spot? Is your arm in the right spot every single time? Can you just put it up? That is the most important punting drill. And guys blow it off all the time because they just think, well, if I just go kick and kick and kick, I'm going to get better. That's not the right approach. Like I talk to kids all the time, even in season. I'm like, how much did you kick off today? 15 balls. Brother, I kicked off 15 balls in a week in college. Yeah. Like that's another kind of side topic of guys not understanding how to train on their own. Because a lot of guys, like you mentioned Central Catholic, they're blessed to have a very smart specialist coach and kicking coach. Not everyone has that. Some guys have very old school coaching where you have to take what you get from camps and guys like us and then translate it into what you do on a daily basis when we're not there. Because my Pittsburgh guys see me let's say at most 10 times a year, because I do a full week before their season starts. That's how actually Coach Krautman and I hooked up.
Yeah.
And then like when we come in this weekend, I'm running a small group on Saturday and then camp with him on Sunday. These guys might only see me 10 times a year, and I have to hammer it to them. All of this has got to translate to you when I'm not around. Like you've got to be able to take what you're learning out on the field and put it into your own program. And I tell guys, you're never going to be more than 40 balls a day. As the week goes down, taper it. Your Thursday practice, don't hit anything you're not asked to. And the most important thing is, are you fresh? That's the number one thing. So there's a fine line to how we coach and what we coach. And we have to look at it to we have to translate our coaching to what best fits kids, not kids fitting the way we coach. And I think that's another big topic to be had at some, some form of how guys coach.
That's a great way to approach it, is tailoring things to each kid and kind of, like you said, their style, not trying to trample on their style. You both talked about that. So that's really cool. Wish you guys all the best of luck this weekend with your camp. So you want to give a quick plug to your camp? Tell people where you're at, what time, how to find you guys, how to sign up, because there's still some time left before the camp rolls. So I'll let you guys kind of plug your stuff, plug your social media, and then we don't want to take too much of your time. So we really thank you for joining us tonight.
So I'm in tandem with Coach. So Sunday, 11 to 2, check-ins at 10 o'clock at Pine Richland High School. If you want any of the registration links for that, go to Coach Krautman. He's Krautman Kicking on X and on Instagram. I am also running a Saturday night small group that I have about half spots left, like 2 or 3 spots left. If you're going on Sunday, there's also a discount for Saturday. So all my socials are Napalm Kicking. You can see there's the brand, shameless plug. There's the logo.
Napalm Krautman. Let's go. Napalm Krautman Kicking all day.
Can always find us. We're gonna teach these guys. We're gonna show them 2 sets of eyes. It's rare that you get a camp like this where, you get 2 different sets of eyes from 2 guys who have a ton of experience dealing with college recruiting, high school guys, the NIL, all this stuff that has changed so much from when we played. Like I only graduated college 6 years ago, and the landscape now is totally different. But Sunday the 31st, it's going to be an awesome day. I'm super excited to be a part of it. Coach?
I have one last thing to say. We're going to make sure they're warmed up properly, stretch properly, because preventing, especially in season, we talked about that. That's why a lot of coaches might be a little hesitant or skeptical about setting their guys during in season, is because of not knowing who the coach is. But I'm really big into dynamic stretching and warming up, as so is Coach Napalm over here. And we're going to make sure drill work is definitely, it's not just throwing the ball out like an old school phys ed teacher and letting them kick. This is going to be an instructional day, and also they're going to be ready to compete, and there's going to be lots of prizes and fun things. And I just want them to have fun and learn and have the best time ever, man. This Sunday, like Coach said, August 31st, Pine Richland High School, 10 a.m. Check in. It's going to be on like Donkey Kong. So everyone bring it.
Awesome. All right, guys. Listen, thanks a lot for joining us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having us.
Okay.
We'll keep in touch, guys.
Yep. Yeah, just go ahead and X out then, and Ian and I will carry on.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Have fun, guys. You got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you, guys.
All right. See you.
All right.
All right. Very interesting.
Yeah, I learned a lot more about kicking in that 20-minute segment than I knew. And even the things about like how the ball spins, I'd never thought about that, but I could totally see how it can mess you up. And so yeah, that was very insightful. So hopefully they have a good camp coming up this weekend, and some kids can learn some ways to better themselves. And I think one of the things they mentioned too that has really struck me is not only at the high school level, but at the pro level, even the proliferation of how much better kickers have gotten in like the last decade. We plug on the show our other podcast that we're on, right? And on my Steel City Blitz podcast about the Steelers, we were actually talking about this a couple of weeks ago, that 10, 15 years ago, right? Like a 50-yard field goal was like a long kick, and it was like maybe a coin flip if they make it. And now these guys are booming 55, 56-yarders like it's nothing. The guy from Jacksonville just hit a 70-yarder against the Steelers in the preseason. Like, it's crazy. For so long, Tom Dempsey's record of the 63-yard field goal stood and was considered like, oh, it was so long. Like, and now it's like, Justin Tucker at what, a 66, and there's been a couple 65s, and the 70 in the preseason doesn't count, but like still there's been a lot of kickers like extending their distance recently. And I think a lot of it is both the technique and the training that goes into kicking that, that sometimes the third phase of the game gets overlooked a little bit, but it's gotten more attention in recent years because the kickers have gotten a lot better at the pro level. And even at the high school level, we talked about the amount of 50+ yard kicks that were made last year. So it's really cool that they're doing this to try and highlight some of these kids who, are working in that third phase of the game.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, let's carry on. We had some big games last week.
We did have some big games last week. Yes. So let's get rolling here. So thank you everyone for joining us this week on the WPIAL Blitz show. If you're watching, you obviously know where to find us on YouTube. You can also check out our social media channels and my articles and WPIAL standings page on steelcityblitz.com. And just as a shameless plug, if anyone's interested in sponsoring the show, there's a big blank spot here where you could get your
big blank spot,
your company's logo, and we're happy to partner with folks and help promote them if anyone out there is interested in a partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the big games. Actually, before we get into the WPIAL games here, I'm going to stop this. Let's before we get into the WPIAL games, let's talk about the Central Catholic LaSalle game, because we spent a good portion of last week's episode previewing that game, and it did not quite go the way that you and Bob Long thought that it would go. You both predicted a high scoring game in the 30s, and someone else on the show said that they thought it had a chance to be a bit of a low scoring game.
Yes.
And credit to Bob. Bob's great. Like, Bob texted me after the game. He was like, I gave you a shout out on the air because you were right about it being a low scoring game. And I was like, it's no skill went into that prediction, right? It's week 0. You're coming off the off season, and
you're not going to either team is not going to put something on tape that somebody is going to use against them in a game that means nothing to either one.
That's fair. Also, I do think, from the WPIAL side, right? I'll talk about that the game played out, I think, from Central Catholic side, very much kind of how I saw Central coming into the season, that they were talented in the trenches, especially on the defensive line. And they're two edge rushers who are both committed to ACC schools. One's going to Duke, one's going to North Carolina. So teammates now, rivals in the future. But they both had pretty good games. But I think I saw the weakness of Central's defense being in the secondary. And, LaSalle did a really good job of not rushing things, right? They were patient. And the last touchdown pass that they hit, they when they interviewed the LaSalle's quarterback after the game, he said, we were able to run the ball down the field that drive, and that brought their safeties up, and we finally got a cover 0 look, which we really didn't have all game. So we were willing to take that shot for the end zone. So I think that LaSalle's patience really paid off in the end. And Central Catholic, starting a sophomore quarterback who hadn't played a football game since he was in 8th grade, basically. He had some ups and downs, made some good throws, had some drops, which really hurt Central's chances too. Some drops in some key situations. But I think, when I looked at Central coming into the year, I was kind of like, they're going to need their defense to carry them until their offense kind of finds its groove. And that's kind of what I saw in this game, that, the offense was inconsistent and the defense, held on as long as they could and made plays, but LaSalle had way too much in this game, right?
Yeah.
LaSalle had all the guys we talked about last week. Bob did a great job of previewing LaSalle. Bob does an awesome job altogether. People should just go follow Bob Long Sports if they're interested in LaSalle football, because he does an awesome job. Good dude. But I think, LaSalle had all the D1 recruits and a lot of them coming back that had played together last year. Whereas, while Central's trying to work in a new quarterback, some new receivers, things like that, LaSalle had that consistency that they could build upon from last year. And ultimately that kind of proved to be the difference in the game. And LaSalle had some incredibly talented defensive players too, that really just, LaSalle's defensive line dominating Central's offensive line in the way they did, I think was one of the bigger surprises of the game. I thought Central would get some movement up front.
And you're exactly right. Each one of these teams came into this game from two totally different directions. Where and LaSalle, they had all the answers to the questions. Pittsburgh Central Catholic looking for answers to the questions. And I think, and I think that LaSalle went about the game as an experienced team would, which means that they knew that, they knew that they had the game in hand and they're not going to really extend themselves too much. And I thought it was a good win. Did it needed to be a mercy rule game? Well, it didn't, and I think that did LaSalle keep something in the tank? I think that they were smart to keep something in the tank and off of film. I mean, they've got big games coming up against Malvern Prep and everybody else. So I don't see why they would show their hand on what they're going to focus on this year. And I think that was the case across the board with these showcase games. A lot of these showcase games, with the exception of Harrisburg and Imhotep, meant nothing. Okay, they were against teams like Bishop McDevitt losing to this team from Canada. It meant nothing. It meant nothing. What it was. It was the second scrimmage. Okay, just like this game, this is the second scrimmage for both of these teams. And I think that teams are smart to do this. I think that, the WPIAL and the fact that, all of these big matchups, and I'm kind of going off on my rant here, but I figured this was a good time to throw it in there, is that in lieu of these second scrimmages, a lot of these teams now are just putting in these games that don't matter to get their team ready for the season. And I think that that's very smart. And I think that the PIAA, needs to figure out something to accommodate for that, because you have half of the teams in the PIAA playing 10 games and half playing 9 or less. And I just don't think that that's a level playing field. And it has nothing to do with boundary or non-boundary or whatever. Either teams are going to play 10 games or how many ever. I think the PIAA has got to set something down on how many games need to count toward making the playoffs, because it's completely different for the WPIAL. Yours comes down to just your conference tournament,
Pretty much.
a total of 6 games, where you have other districts where it's all 10 games meet that. That's not fair because of the fact that teams only need to, put up, go out and win so many games. And we talked about, the buys in the tournament. Well, they need to start now, even backing up and looking into the regular season. How many meaningful games is the PIAA going to mandate to get, qualify for the tournament? Is it 6? Is it 8? Even though the PIAA is playing 10 games, only 6 games count that they really need to put maximum effort.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if it was up to me, I mean, as well as I do, I've, run calculations and power rankings formulas of my own and all that stuff, right? We'll talk about that more as the season progresses. But I mean, if it was up to me, I think it would be 9 games, right? You have a 9-week regular season, right? Week 0 is kind of that extra one. It's optional. I would say I could see a case for 8 that, like, if you can't find an opponent one week, if there's a postponed game, if something has to happen, right? Like, those are special circumstances that you can give exemptions to. But I think like 9 games should probably be the standard for most teams. And the week 0, though, I think it is fun and interesting that, these, like we talked about last week, these are the types of matchups, Central Catholic, LaSalle, that I think the PIAA had in mind whenever they put week 0 in. They were like, this is the opportunity to get outside your bubble, right? Like, go play somebody else. Play these games that will elevate the profile of football in Pennsylvania. It's not necessarily about wins and losses, right? Like, is it a little more than it's a little more than a glorified scrimmage. It's not quite a second scrimmage, but it's, you go play these games and it's a chance to see someone from another part of the state or out of state, right? Pine Richland traveled to Ohio. McKeesport played Delaware
Central
Valley.
York as well. Central York goes and plays, an Ohio team.
Yeah. Well, and
Okay.
actually, and to that point too, if you remember a couple years ago when we had McKeesport's head coach on, they went up and played a game. I think they played a game around Erie. I don't remember who they played against. It was in some event up there for week 0. But he talked about like just the experience of like getting the team on a bus and traveling and spending a night in a hotel as a team together, and like that time that you get that's on a bus in a hotel outside of football to do kind of those team building activities, and how important that was to just like get his team to gel together as a locker room. Some of those things that you don't really see are really important for teams too. So I think I didn't like week 0 when they put it in. I've come to appreciate what it could be. I do wish more teams would go out and challenge themselves. And I really appreciate the teams that went out and did challenge themselves to games. Now, I understand some small schools have some limitations with travel and budgets and all that.
I think it's a challenge in name only. Okay. It's a challenge in name only. Yep. They got this marquee matchup with LaSalle College. You know what? That game didn't mean anything. It was an exhibition. It doesn't affect LaSalle, and it doesn't affect whether Pittsburgh Central Catholic is or is not going to make the PIAA. Just like Cathedral Prep, they play 6 games against teams in the state of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. Well, same with St. Joe's Prep. St. Joe's Prep plays a bunch of teams
exactly.
from outside the state.
I absolutely right. And look at the other teams as well, in the Philadelphia Catholic League, but in the perimeter areas, the ones that have a difficulty getting it, what they're using it is to their advantage, okay, to play games that really don't matter, so that all they've got to do is ratchet it up only at certain times. Yet teams in District 1 and District 3 are out there like, locking horns for 10 games before they make the PIAA. Look, that takes a toll on a team for injuries and everything else. So I just don't think it's a level playing field in the regular season at all. And it's getting worse.
Yeah, and you're right, because because the way Pennsylvania is set up as a whole is on a district by district level, right? That each district decides how their playoff qualification is going to happen. And we have 12 districts and all 12 do them differently, which is kind of crazy that it's like everybody decides how their postseason setup works and is completely different every district you go to. So I think, if you want a standardized state tournament, then there probably has to be a little bit more leadership from the PIAA to say, hey, like you
got to play X number of games in the state,
right? Yeah, to qualify for the state playoffs or whatever it is, right?
Right, exactly. If you can't play that many games, then and look, I get the fact. Well, nobody wants to play them. Well, the PIAA's got to do something about leveling the playing field in the regular season before it even gets to the playoffs there, because you got teams. I don't want to say that they're sandbagging or whatever like that, but if a game doesn't matter, then the level of intensity and holding players back and everything else, you don't know the quality of the teams that they're playing. It's a team from out of state. Well, are they good or are they bad? You don't know.
Yeah. Well, and even things like records aren't always a good indicator, right? Because I think last year, I don't remember if it was St. Joe's Prep or one of those other Philly Catholic League teams played like the Matha out of DC or Maryland, who's like one of those national recruiting powerhouses, right? But like,
I think Imhotep played them. I think.
Yeah, but I think DeMatha went like 6-4 or something like that. But like, does that mean they're barely above 500 team, or does that mean like because DeMatha plays a national schedule, right?
In the scheme of things, it didn't matter. Now,
right.
There's always the excuse, well, nobody would play us. People would play them if the PIAA said that they had to.
Well, and part of that's on the districts too, right? Like we've talked about this before with how the WPIAL does scheduling, that once we get to the regular season, which is coming now, right? Weeks 1 through 9, the WPIAL schedules out all their teams' schedules for weeks 1 through 9. That's not like that statewide. Other districts, like I know you've talked about some of the struggle schools out in District 3, like Steel High, and some of the other ones have had that nobody wants to play them, so
Nobody
they
wants to
can't get
play him.
teams on
Nobody
their
wants to
schedule.
play anybody out of the Philadelphia Catholic League. I
Right.
mean,
But some of that's on the district, right? Like District 12, District 3, whoever is going to be like, no, we're going to make your schedule and you're going to play your schedule. And if you don't want to play this schedule, then go independent like the Malvern Preps of the world and play a national schedule.
right.
Right.
And they're not going to do that unless there's something from the PIAA mandating the fact that you have to have, I don't know,
So many
play eight
district games
games
or
that
whatever. Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, having a sample size of 3 games to qualify, or 4 games to qualify for the PIAA tournament when other teams have to play 10 games, that's not a level playing field. I don't care what it is.
Yeah. No, I totally get what you're saying. Yep. Absolutely. So let's get back to
Yeah,
talking
let's
about
get
this
back to
week.
what
Yeah.
we
So
I just had to get that in there.
no, that was some good discourse, some good discussion. So the biggest wins of the week, two games of teams that did go out and challenge themselves. And Amani Christian was the #1 seed in 3A last year, lost in the semifinals, brought back a ton of talent. Clairton reached the 1A championship game last year. So like I'm really glad these teams, like, this is a
Oh yeah.
game, like these teams went out and challenged themselves, right? They were like, one of the best 1A teams is going to play one of the best 3A teams, and we're going to go strength on strength and see what happens. And it was a low scoring slobber knocker that Amani was kind of in control for a lot of it. Clairton scored a late touchdown to make it a little bit closer. That said, there was both of these games that are my biggest wins of the week. They got to that category because there was controversial officiating calls at the goal line at both. That Clairton had a play where a runner was called down where it looked like he dove and extended the ball out over the goal line, and Penn Trafford and Norwin, which are rivals out in Westmoreland County, Norwin's quarterback right at the end of the game had a QB sneak from the 1 yard line that it was very close, that he fumbled on the play too. So, and when you're pushing into a pile of people, it's really hard to tell, does the ball cross the plane before the quarterback fumbles? It got on the field, it was ruled a fumble. Penn Trafford recovered, won the game. So, not to take anything away from what Amani Christian and Penn Trafford did in those games, because these are good wins for those guys. But also, I think there was a lot more conversation on WPIAL Twitter this weekend about, instant replay and people watching replays on Twitter and
Oh
saying that,
man,
things like that. But it was, hey, it's high school
instant.
football. There's no instant replay. It is what it is. You got to live with the calls, but it makes it tough when you have two one-score games that both had, both losing
For a
teams
game
had,
that doesn't matter. It doesn't
well,
matter.
hey, you know what? Penn Trafford and Norwin are old rivals.
I know.
You go tell those people that game doesn't matter. They will tell you you're dead wrong
Well,
about
no, I'm right. I guess the definition of matter is, Hey, listen, but
it.
before we
Yeah.
get too far, our buddy Bruce Emsweiler, thanks for your chats so far, Bruce. And
Thanks
hey,
for tuning in.
remember, viewers out there, the live chat's open. Jump in there, ask questions, man. That's why we do this thing live on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. We love getting questions.
If I'm dead
So,
wrong, then tell me I'm wrong.
yeah. And if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong too. That's totally fine, We're here to be entertaining and informative, and that's the goal.
And berated.
Yeah, so the two games of the week this past week, both of them came down to the final play of the game. North Allegheny took a late lead against Woodland Hills, and Woodland Hills threw a crossing route on the final play to their all-star wide receiver, Scoop Smith, and he made it like 62 yards and came up about 3 yards short of the end zone, but weaving back and forth across the field. And it was one of those plays where you're like, instead of just throwing the old Hail Mary at the end of the game, like hit your best player on a crossing route while he's, already at full speed and just see what happens. And Woodland Hills did it and almost pulled off the upset on North
Yeah.
Allegheny. So, but I think this game too, we talked a little bit about it last week that I thought it was going to be Woodland Hills skill position guys against North Allegheny's, power line in the trenches and all that. And that pretty much was what it came down to. But Woodland Hills was there neck and neck, stride for stride with North Allegheny. So I think that bodes very well for Woodland Hills this season that they were able to hang in there as a 5A team with a 6A quality team like North Allegheny. The other one, Moon against Trinity, the ending to this one was just wild. It was tied 7-7. Trinity's quarterback, Jonah Williamson, who's got D1 offers at linebacker, and why people aren't looking at him at quarterback, I don't know, because he's got a great arm and can fly. But so Jonah Williamson busted off an 80-yard touchdown run with about a minute to go to put Trinity in front 13-7. And then Moon drives it back down the field and throws a touchdown pass with like 20 seconds left to win the game. So, it's 7-7 with a minute left. And then all of a sudden you get a 80-yard touchdown one way and then a 40-yard touchdown pass in the back of the end zone the other way. And it was just a wild finish between Moon and Trinity. So I think both those teams are going to be pretty good this year. The upset of the week, Newcastle beating Penn Hills and shutting them out too, which is very impressive. Credit to Newcastle for scheduling this game, right? Their coach said after the game, like, look, we're trying to bring Newcastle's program back, and to do that, we want to schedule tough opponents and go out there and play the best that we can. So credit to Newcastle for putting a team like Penn Hills on their schedule, right? Newcastle's a 4A team. They could have scheduled another 4A team, a 3A team, something like that. They went out and picked a 5A opponent that's pretty darn good and put them on the schedule and went out and played them.
Yeah, just an incredible game, and you like to see that. Sometimes these teams kind of overstretch, their bounds and say, "Oh, we want to do well," and they really schedule somebody where there's really no chance. But just incredible job by Newcastle.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really great, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which was an area where they struggled a little bit down the stretch last year. So props to Newcastle and best of luck to Coach Mo, who we had on the show last year,
Yeah.
continuing the turnaround there.
Yeah.
All right. Our WPIAL Blitz Show player of the week
Oh
is
my.
Keemon Spell from McKeesport. At one point in this game, he had 3 touches and 3 touchdowns. Delaware Valley did run him out of bounds a few times, but he returned the opening kickoff 98 yards for a touchdown, finished with 295 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. So 5 total touchdowns, and got some clips here from our friend, the WPIAL Insider. I did a little spot on the WPIAL Insider show last week to promote this show and just talk about high school football. So look at this. He gets caught on the sideline, spins through like 6 tackles, and then goes back the other way. And this dude's only a junior, so we have 2 years to enjoy him, and he's already committed to Penn State. So you can tell all your Penn State guys about how good Keemon Spell is and how he just ran right through Delaware Valley this week.
Yeah, that was this was his performance was actually a big talk at the Harrisburg Imhotep game. It really was.
Yeah. And I know that McKeesport still has to potentially go through the likes of Thomas Jefferson to win a WPIAL title. But I mean, anytime you have a guy with this level of talent that has the speed, the power, and everything else that Keemon Spell brings to the table, you got to be excited for what McKeesport's got going on this year.
Look at that, just bursting right through the middle there.
Yep. Yeah, so congratulations to Keemon Spell, our WPIAL Blitz Show player of the week. Some other really good performances. David Dennison took over the lead role in Bethel Park's backfield, ran for 238 and 4 touchdowns against a 6A team in Seneca Valley. So really good performance there. I got to talk about this one too. Ben McHenry from Quaker Valley. Like, he literally, you talk about somebody who did everything for their team. 100
and Quaker Valley's needed a guy like him for the last couple years.
They have, right. But I mean, just look at this stat line, right? 100 plus rushing yards and a touchdown, a passing touchdown, a kickoff return for a touchdown. played defense, made 10 tackles, an interception, and blocked a kick. And then he's also their kicker. He kicked a field goal and made 3 PATs. Like literally did everything for them this week. So shout out to Ben McHenry for literally doing everything for Quaker Valley, a little bit of everything for Quaker Valley this week. They had a very good game this week. Other players contributed. I don't want to say he did everything for the team, but he did. He was involved in all phases of the game, is what I mean by doing everything.
Incredible effort.
Yep. And speaking of incredible efforts, I do need to give a shout out to Dom Detriff, the quarterback from Hempfield. His father, who was a coach at Penn Trafford and played at Jeanette back in the day, passed away suddenly a few weeks ago. So Dom, obviously playing with a heavy heart, but went out there and threw 3 touchdown passes for Hempfield in a winning effort. So you can check out, I know Penn Trafford has some GoFundMe's and things like that for the family. Since he was a coach there. So go check out Penn Trafford's social media stuff. I've seen it all over Facebook and Twitter and all that. So if you're interested in supporting a good cause, you can find that there. And then finally, our other top performance was the Mars combination of Colin Urensic, who is a sophomore quarterback, throwing to their senior wide receiver, Gabe Hine. They connected for 4 touchdown passes for Mars. So, that Coach Casper offense can throw the ball all over the field, and they've got a star receiver in Gabe Hine. So I know I talked last week about watch out for Mars, but watch out for Mars. All right. So our streak watch, and because no WPIAL teams won a state title last year, the only teams that entered this season with a winning streak were those that didn't make the playoffs, because everyone that made the playoffs lost a game last year at the end of last year. So bit of a weird situation, but West Mifflin and Carmichael's entered the year with 3-game winning streaks that they had at the tail end of the regular season, but didn't quite make it into the playoffs. West Mifflin lost this week. Carmichael's didn't have a game, so Carmichael's will be the holder of the longest active winning streak in the WPIAL entering week 1. But I will note that defending WPIAL champs were 5-1 last week, with the only loss being Central Catholic falling to LaSalle.
Yeah.
On the losing streak side, did not go very well for many of these teams. The closest game was Beaver Falls losing by only 2 to Blackhawk. So hopefully Beaver Falls is able to turn things around a bit this year after they went from WPIAL champs in 2023 to a winless season in 2024, which is just very rare for that Beaver Falls program. They've been incredibly competitive for so long. So hopefully Beaver Falls is able to turn things back around this year. A 2-point loss to a 4A team is a good sign for the start of the year for Beaver Falls. But hopefully some of these other teams are able to right the ship a little bit. I know a few of these teams on the losing streak side have had some real trouble with numbers, with just like getting guys to come out and play on the team. Like I heard Baldwin, which is a 5A program, only has like 30 some guys on the roster, and that's just tough to compete at that level when you just don't have the roster size that your opponents do. So hopefully, some of these other teams are able to turn things around, and we'll keep watching our streaks as they go throughout the year.
Absolutely.
Talked about this a little bit earlier, the scheduling format now. So week 0 was optional play for teams, and teams got to schedule their own games. Real shout out, props to the teams that went out and challenged themselves in week 0. So now we move into week 1, where all the games from here on out are scheduled by the WPIAL for the first 2 weeks of the season. We have non-conference play for everybody. So these games won't necessarily count towards playoff qualification, I'll say. Let me put it this way. They won't count for standings, right? For the conference standings, they don't count. But last year, the WPIAL did make a change. So the top
they do count in the human element
of the wild card, right?
Yeah.
And every classification except for 6A has a wild card. So the top 2 or 3 teams in each conference are guaranteed playoff spots, and those are determined by just your conference record. But then other teams are also eligible for wild card spots. And we did see some of these non-conference games come into play and be factors in some of those wild card decisions that were made last year. So I will say they don't matter for the conference standings for those guaranteed spots. But if teams wind up in these wild card spots, some of these non-conference games can be taken into consideration for how they wound up. So these games do start to matter a little bit as we get into things.
Sure.
So let's talk about our games of the week here. The big one is Pine Richland, the defending 5A champs, playing against Central Catholic, the defending 6A champs. And what better way to start the formal part of the season than just having the defending 5A champs take on the defending 6A champs? Just a great matchup overall. A lot of people have said they think Pine Richland might be the best team in the whole WPIAL this year, and they'll get a chance to prove it going up against Central Catholic. They'll also play North Allegheny later in the year, but both of these teams are just oozing with talent all over the field. So this should definitely be a good one. Bounce back game opportunity for Central Catholic. It doesn't get easy for them, right? They could very easily start the season 0-2. Pine Richland coming off a big win against a team from Ohio last week. They seem to be clicking on all cylinders, but this kind of seems like a game that was similar to the Central LaSalle game, right? Like Pine Richland brought a lot back from last year. They've got their quarterback back, they've got their leading rusher back, they've got a bunch of linemen, and Central's still trying to figure things out on offense. So, like, how does that play out, right? Because does Pine Richland's experience as a group propel them, to be able to have that consistency against the Central Catholic team that's still kind of working on figuring out kind of what their rhythm is offensively?
Yeah, I think it's very going to be very interesting, and as you talked about, I mean, a lot of people are saying, clearly that Pine Richland, um, one of those teams that are, even in the 5A classification, that they're going to be right up there with any 6A program that they would face.
Yeah, and this is one of those instances where I do kind of wish we still had four classifications, because I would love to see what Pine Richland could do against, a 6A slate of teams,
Hmm.
and potentially getting into the state playoffs, and having a shot at some of those teams. But there's some very good 5A teams out there too. So
Hmm.
it's not going to be easy for Pine Richland, as the season goes on. The other big game this week, Peters Township taking on McKeesport. This is a battle of runner-ups from last year. Peters Township, the runner-up to Pine Richland in 5A, McKeesport, the runner-up to Thomas Jefferson in 4A. But this, once again, I mean, both teams, McKeesport with Keemon Spell, the Penn State commit, but Peters Township has a bunch of D1 kids as well. I think one of their edge rusher, outside linebackers, is going to Stanford, and one's going to Pitt, if I remember correctly. Got a couple other good linemen, and a quarterback who can throw the ball over the yard, in Nolan DeLucia. But this is also a big contrast of styles. McKeesport runs the triple option. They're going to run,
Sure.
they're going to run, they're going to run, then they're going to run some more. Peters Township has a quarterback that can throw the ball all over the yard. So this game to me comes down to, if Peters Township can get up by a couple touchdowns and take McKeesport out of their comfort zone where they just run the ball all the time. If Keemon Spell goes nuts and runs wild on Peters Township again, it's going to be a long day for Peters Township trying to just keep up with McKeesport's running game. Because the other thing McKeesport can do, like, yes, Keemon Spell can score anytime he touches the ball from anywhere on the field. The other thing is, though, McKeesport can just grind you down with that triple option and, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and just matriculate the ball down the field, 4 yards, 5 yards, 8 yards, 8 yards, 7 yards, and just like take 5, 6, 7 minutes off the clock and just, pound you to death. So this game's a really interesting contrast of styles, and a good matchup of two very talented teams.
Yeah, and are you going to go down each and every one? Because there's one that really strikes my fancy, that that I'm very interested in.
All right, I'll talk some more. So Aliquippa and Bell Vernon, both of these teams have dealt with some coaching changes. Last year, this game got rained out because of thunderstorms. So last year it was a battle of two defending state champions that didn't happen, but should be a fun one this year. Aliquippa with Coach Warfield back on the sidelines. This will be their first game because they had a scrimmage last weekend. And then Bell Vernon with a new head coach after Matt Humbert stepped back into just being the athletic director. So should be a good one there between those. Mars against Bethel Park. This one has all the makings of being a shootout. Mars put up 42 points last week. Bethel Park, I think they had like 660 yards of total offense against Seneca Valley. So two very high-powered offenses, and this one should be a good one. Moon against Montour. battle of teams out in the Western Hills of Allegheny County. Montour coming off a hard-fought win over Central Valley, and Moon got that tough victory over Trinity last week, so that should be a good one. Newcastle against Hopewell. Newcastle obviously came off that big win over North Hills last week, that shutout victory. Hopewell won 56-0 and is really a program that's resurgent on the way back up. So this one should be a pretty good kind of measuring stick game. Is, how well does Hopewell measure up against Newcastle, who looks pretty good so far this year? Newcastle being a 4A squad and Hopewell in 3A, but should be a good one there. Central Valley against Thomas Jefferson. These two have kind of been rivals since Central Valley became a school back in 2010 with the merger of Center and Monaca. They met in a couple WPIAL championship games, and two programs that are among the winningest in WPIAL history from a win percentage standpoint. Central Valley, like I said, was only formed 15 years ago, but they, from just a winning percentage standpoint, are among the best. And just the coaching matchup there of Mark Lyons against Bill Cherpak, has won the most WPIAL titles of any head coach. So that one definitely should be a classic. And Central Valley coming off a close loss to Montour last week. And this one is, the WPIAL didn't do Central Valley any favors from a scheduling standpoint, right?
This was the one that piqued my interest. First off, I mean, you touched on the fact that Central Valley went down to Montour last week. The pedigree of both teams. But on the flip side, Central Valley trying to get their mojo back. I mean, let's be real here. They were in 4A. It didn't bode so well. They dropped back down to 3A last year. Really had a tough season. Now, I mean, trying to reestablish themselves as, quite honestly, elite in my view.
Yeah, I will say that, they went 5-5 last year, but all 5 of their losses, well, actually, sorry, four of their 5 losses were against teams from higher classifications, right? Because they had to play Montour, they played Thomas Jefferson, played other tough. They played North Hills, who's a 5A team, right? And they're a 3A team now. So, when you get a schedule like that where you're forced into playing, and like we said, right, the WPIAL makes the schedules. So from this point forward, so yes, they voluntarily played Montour, but their non-conference schedule is Montour, Thomas Jefferson, Bell Vernon, and North Hills. So that doesn't, that's not an easy slate of teams to go through.
Right, and that's the thing. The WPIAL not doing them any favors. It's not like they certainly, there certainly isn't a team there that has the expectation of W.
Right.
So how do you go into a season this year the same way that you did last, with basically just getting beaten about the head and shoulders in your non-conference schedule? That's why I'm really interested in this matchup, to see how Central Valley matches up or bounces back from that opening loss.
Yeah, and it was a close game. It was 27-20. Montour scored a fourth quarter touchdown to pull out the win. Central Valley's quarterback threw some interceptions that, they have some things to fix, but it's week 0. They've got time to do it. I will say, though, in the WPIAL's defense, they did recognize the strength of Central Valley's schedule, because Central Valley got the number 2 seed in the playoffs last year. So even though they were 5-5, they split their conference title 3 ways, because Central Valley, Avonworth, and Beaver all beat each other. That the WPIAL did reward them for playing that tough non-conference schedule, even though they lost those games with the number 2 seed in the playoffs. And they made the title game.
Fair enough.
Lost to Avonworth.
Fair enough.
And then Highlands and Elizabeth Forward, last year, those two teams played a triple overtime game that got settled by a 2-point conversion. So both those teams off to good starts this year. Nice little measuring stick game in 3A between teams in different conferences. These are the ones I always look for, right? The games between teams in the same classification but different conferences, to kind of how do the conferences stack up against each other. That I think that's a good way to look at things. Same thing in 1A here. We've got Cornell against California. Cornell plays a physical brand of football, and California is a very run-heavy squad too. I think Cornell's a really talented team. They've been talented for a few years now. They just unfortunately play in the same conference as Fort Cherry, the two-time
Yeah.
defending champs, and Bishop Canevin, who's also really good. And that is unfortunately just because of geography, like they're all located really close to each other. That Cornell's one of those teams that's kind of flown under the radar, but is a really good squad. And California has been, kind of the team to beat in the Tri-County South for the last decade. So I think this is a good matchup between two teams that both made it to the quarterfinals last year in 1A, just to kind of see how they stack up against each other. And then Steel Valley against Wash High, two teams in 2A. That 2A is totally wide open right now, right? That Seton LaSalle got smoked by North Catholic this past week. Seton lost a lot of kids to transfers and
Right. I was
graduation.
going to ask about that game too. That
Yeah.
one kind of surprised me.
It didn't, full disclosure, I'm a North Catholic alumni, so, a little bit biased here, but Seton lost some players to transfer. Their star wide receiver, Khalil Taylor, who's a Penn State commit, went to Pine Richland. Trey Littlejohn, their other wide receiver, went to Penn Hills. A couple other guys went other places. North Catholic returned the WPIAL's leading passer and their top receiver, and pretty good running back in Tom Arth and a couple other good players too. So Joey Felitsky, the quarterback, Riker Kennedy, the wide receiver. So anytime you've got a 3A team that returns a lot of starters, including the WPIAL's leading passer, against a 2A squad that is, like we said, trying to figure things out, right? Got to work in some new starters, had a lot of, star players transfer. I wasn't shocked that North Catholic beat them. I was a little surprised they beat them by that much. It was 47-14. But I wasn't shocked that North won just because of that, the consistency carrying over from last year, right? When you got a star
Mhm.
quarterback and his leading receiver coming back, you got something
Sure.
there. So I wasn't shocked by that, but I do think 2A is wide open, right? Seton's definitely taken a step back. Seton beat North Catholic last year, by the way. So, so Seton's taken a step back. They were the number one seed. South Park looked pretty good in their debut, being the defending champions, but they also lost a bit to graduation, including the Cunningham brothers, who are two D1 linemen up front. So 2A is wide open here. Steel Valley's got Deron Barksdale as their kind of star. They put him at quarterback this year and are just kind of taking the philosophy of we're going to snap it to our best player every play
Mhm.
and let him do something with it. Washington's got a talented quarterback, a talented receiver. So, Washington had kind of a down year last year, but returned some talented players and traditionally have been a very strong program. So I think these are two really good teams facing off here between Steel High and Steel Valley and Wash High. So we'll
Mhm.
see how it plays out in that one.
Okay.
All right, so our friends of the show this week, our KDKA News Radio team, doing the Pine Richland Central Catholic game, which is definitely the premier game in the WPIAL of the two defending champions. And then our friends at WMBS out of Uniontown doing the Ambridge Laurel Highlands game. That's a non-conference game in 4A, so we'll see between two 4A opponents. So like I said, those matchups of teams in the same classification, it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out too. Laurel
Yeah.
Highlands got a shutout victory over their Fayette County rivals Uniontown last week. All right, so this is a fun one here. I'm gonna have a drink of
Oh
water
my.
before I roll through this.
Elwood.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Elwood City last year when they won their first conference championship since the 80s and had their first undefeated season since 1944. But Elwood City in 1925 was an unbeaten, untied, unscored upon WPIAL champion. So this was the only championship in their school history. In week 7, they faced Newcastle, who was a powerhouse back then. Newcastle was on a 43-game winning streak. Hadn't lost since 1922, so that was like a 3-year, right? 4-year winning streak, something like that. And Elwood City beat them. Both teams entered the game not only undefeated but unscored upon, and Elwood City beat them 14-0. So this was one of 7 teams in WPIAL history to be unbeaten and unscored upon. The
Wow.
interesting thing was, back in 1925, the if two teams were considered kind of equals. They might play for a championship, but there was also a committee of the Syracuse University Alumni Association that could award a champion. So this was an awarded championship, but the interesting caveat to that, and thanks to our friends at PA Football History who helped with some research and some old articles that I found this stuff, was that Elwood City finished their regular season undefeated, and they were supposed to play Jeanette, who was also undefeated at the time, on like December 4th or 5th, like in early December. And then Jeanette went out and scheduled a game on Thanksgiving weekend against somebody. I don't remember who they played, but Jeanette scheduled a game on Thanksgiving weekend and they tied 6-6. So Jeanette now has a tie. So Elwood, being completely undefeated and unscored upon, gets awarded the championship, and they wind up not playing the championship game against Jeanette because Jeanette tied this game, right?
Oh my
That
God.
they just went out and scheduled on Thanksgiving weekend. So then Elwood gets contacted by this team out of Freeport, Illinois, who hadn't lost a game in 5 years, and is like, hey, you're undefeated and unscored upon. We're also, I think they might have been undefeated and unscored upon too, but they were like, let's play a game as like the national championship because we're both like two of the premier teams. So this Freeport team came to Pitt Stadium in Pittsburgh and they played a game in mid-December, and Freeport won 13-7. So as kind of this, you talk about showcase games, but it was billed as like the high school football national championship between Elwood City and this team from Freeport, Illinois. So cool piece of history here.
Wow.
Yeah. That back in the day.
Always good stuff from PA Football History.
Yep. And you can follow him on Twitter at PA Football or PAFB History. So find him as well. Good friend of the show. Good dude. So that's going to wrap it up for what we've got tonight. But if you enjoyed hearing me talk about high school football, you can also tune into the Steel City Blitz podcast, which airs on Thursday nights at 10 o'clock on YouTube. Check it out on the Steel City Blitz podcast or SCB podcast channel on YouTube. We also have a live chat too. So if you enjoy chatting with us here on the show, chat with us on the SCB podcast. A little bit more swearing and stuff on that show. It's a little more of an adult show than this one, but it's the NFL and not high school football.
Yeah, fresh set of downs. We're gonna pick it up in September, and that after we got a little bit of history behind us here. So fresh set of downs. I think the best name in podcasts, and that. Yeah, that we'll pick that up in September.
Cool. And you've got your Penn State stuff rolling too, right? You're covering them again this year?
Actually, I mean, my duties at PennLive, it's kind of on an as needed basis.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I was there for media day. Not sure if I guess I'll find out tomorrow whether I'm going up there Saturday or not. It's either going to be Penn State or I'll be broadcasting Bishop McDevitt in Harrisburg. So,
Oh no, what a yeah.
so you figure that one out. I mean, quite honestly, I hope that we're in negotiations right now, hoping that we can land this McDevitt Harrisburg matchup. I mean, that's going to be a whale of a game.
Yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, as much as I enjoy college football, watching Penn State beat up on Nevada versus like two of the premier teams from out that way, I would choose the McDevitt Harrisburg game because that's a rivalry game too between cross city rivals in Harrisburg.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of bad blood there, and so fingers crossed that we can make that happen.
Does McDevitt still have the rock pile there?
The rock pile?
Didn't they have like a rock pile next to their field?
Not the new field.
Okay, I guess they must have gotten a new field then. A friend of mine went to McDevitt back in the day, and I remember them telling me about like the rock pile that was next to their field.
Well, yeah, I think that's the new Bishop McDevitt High School and what have you is I think outside the city limits of Harrisburg now. So didn't really know anything about the rock pile. Maybe next to the Dauphin County Jail, but not next to Bishop McDevitt High School.
Okay. Well, if you do that game, ask someone about the rock pile.
I
So
will. I'll ask. I'll see Eric Epler tomorrow. I'll ask him about the rock pile.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning into this week's edition of the WPIAL Blitz Show. And catch us next week. Next week, I think we're going to be Tuesday, right? Because next Monday's
Yeah,
Labor Day.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Hey, look, and we have a lot of coaches that watch this thing. Guys, if you want to join the show, just ask. We'll get you the link and drop in. We like these drop ins. That was a big thing that really came out well on Fresh Set of Downs last year. Is that we just had coaches and we'd send out the link and they would just drop in, and talk some football. So Ian, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, let's get the link. We ought to need to get some kind of all these emails together and a blast email to coaches and send the link, the Zoom link to them and say, hey, stop by anytime here.
Yeah, and I want to be respectful of their time. I know they're very busy.
Oh,
So,
sure.
but yeah, if people, if people have time on, Monday nights, we start around 9:30. We're usually on till about 11. But if folks want to drop in, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, anything else. You know where to find us, and we're happy to talk ball with people because everybody's got good stories out there, right? We try and
Yeah.
highlight as many as we can, but there's a lot of great things happening in Western Pennsylvania as far as football goes. And I think something that from the beginning of today's show stood out to me too was last week when we had Bob Long on, we talked about and also Coach Leemeyer from Central Catholic, but talked about how talented not only the senior classes this year statewide, but the junior classes is both of these top two classes this year are really good. And
Yeah.
the two guys we had on, from the kicking camp to start the show, both talked about like how talented this junior and senior class is. So there's a lot of great stories out there, a lot of things we'd love to highlight as much as we can. So if folks want to come on the show and are interested, feel free to hit us up. And anyone that's doing any other kind of stuff, whether it's coaching, camps, anything else. If you want to talk ball, just let us know. We're happy to talk.
Media guys, athletic
Yeah.
directors, administrators.
We had the mayor
Um,
from Aliquippa on a few years ago. He
yeah,
was awesome.
I saw Mr. Walker on TV this week too, and
Yeah,
that
they had a really scary situation. Prayers up
yeah.
to all them there. Their middle school team bus on the way to a game on Saturday was in an accident and some kids had to go to the hospital. Sounds like there's still maybe a couple kids that are still in the hospital, but
Mhm.
seems like the community's really rallied around the team there at Aliquippa and continued prayers for both the kids that are in the hospital and just the whole community because you hate to see that happen.
Yeah, you do hate to see that happen, but yeah, friends of the show. I mean, we'll talk during the week here, see how we can get some kind of a blast link to the coaches to say, hey, stop by, man. You're more than welcome to stop by and talk about your football program anytime you want. And that message goes out to the coaches now because we never find out how many coaches are watching the show till we get them on the show, and then they go, "Oh, I'm a big fan of the show."
I'm continually surprised when I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, I watched the show," or when they reach out to me like, "Hey, you talked about this," and here's what I'm like, "Wow, I can't believe how many like coaches watch the show." It's like I it's a labor
We're
of love for me,
speechless
and
at
it
that.
really is. Like, I kind of jokingly say like I'm just a guy with a spreadsheet, and I follow it and enjoy just talking about football and talking about kind of the big picture trends and all that. Right? I did a guest spot on the WPIAL Insider podcast last week, and we were talking about how their their niche, kind of what they specialize in, is like being the insider, like they know the coaches, they know the players, they know about college recruiting, that kind of stuff. Whereas what we do here, I feel like is kind of complementary to what they do, right? Like they've got like a lot of the nitty gritty details of the players and all that. And we talk a lot of big picture, like, here's the trends and here's the teams that haven't made the playoffs in 20 years and all that, kind of the big picture storyline. So I think, between everyone that's talking about high school football in Western Pennsylvania. I ran into John from PA today. He's got a lot of good stuff going on too. So there's just a lot of great content out there right now. And I would just encourage people, consume as much of it as you can, because there's a lot of great stuff out there. And, we really are glad that, high school football has risen to the level where you've got like multiple podcasts you can choose from. And we're honored that you choose to listen to ours.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I want to thank our buddy Bruce Emsweiler. He basically said the old McDevitt Field was part of an old quarry. The
Ah,
old McDevitt Field. At the one end zone, it was a pretty biff cliff, is what he said. So a buddy and historian Bruce Emsweiler, and that's why, like I said, we do this show so that we can interact with the fans. I mean,
yeah.
how many podcasts are interactive? I'm sitting there trying to figure out how many. I can't think of any.
Not many. And it's a challenge too, right? Because you got to do it live to be interactive.
Yeah.
And a lot of people record their shows and things like that, and that's fine. Like everybody's got their own thing that they do, and
Everybody's got
that's
their own
totally
thing.
cool.
We
And
we try and
yeah,
cater to the fan, cater to
yeah.
the coaches.
Yep, absolutely. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We appreciate you taking the time to check us out and listen to us talk ball. And feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. I'm WPIAL Blitz. He's Badgley Bruce, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday night because Monday's Labor Day. So everybody have a safe Labor Day. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll be right back at it next week talking more football.
All right. See you later.